Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode or stream of Building with Web 5. Basically, if you don't know about this stream, every Friday, Ace and I chat with a SSI experts in our industry. Feel free to say hey Ace before I introduce our guest.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back.
Awesome. All right. So I'm super excited, by the way, y'all, about this particular stream. Our guests have something really, really cool to show us, and they have really great energy. I just want to say hi to the people that are currently in the chat so far. So, hey, Thomas, and also whoever LinkedIn user is, what's going on? I don't even
Yeah,
want to talk. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. We also have a bunch of people joining us from Discord. It doesn't show up on Twitch like that. So yeah, hello, Ebony, Senin, Chris. Thank you for joining us as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, y'all. And I don't want to talk too much. I'll let Nick and Julian go ahead and just introduce themselves, whatever you want to tell us about yourselves. We're interested and eager to learn.
Julian, do you mind going first?
Sure. Hi. So I'm Julian. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Heirloom. A little bit about me. I'm based in LA. I got started in Web3 back before it was called Web3, when it was still just Bitcoin. I was the first engineer at a company called Gem. We were working on hierarchical deterministic wallets and multi-sig. And then we pivoted into enterprise blockchain. Working on trying to do some pilots in the medical space, doing medical records on the blockchain, which is actually where I got my first taste of decentralized identity and the whole space that we're in now. We ran into problems with how do you spread a identity data across disparate systems, and we never really found a satisfying solution back then. This was like around 2016, 2017. And then I was inspired enough by my experience there to co-found Heirloom with Nick. I'll let Nick take over from here.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm curious how y'all met. Sorry, go ahead. But I'm curious how y'all met.
That's actually Rizel, that's actually the story I was going to tell. Julian and I met working together at another startup. So Julian's obviously a brilliant engineer. My background's in user experience design and product management. And so we were individual contributor counterparts at another startup like 12 years ago. And we became really good friends building and shipping software together. Something I love to say, because it's true, but it's also a little funny, is that Julian is the person that brought me into Web3 and to self-sovereign identity. I started my worldview off as a big blockchain and SSI skeptic, and it was through Julian very patiently walking me through fundamental concepts and kind of breaking down the power of decentralized ledgers. That really clicked for me. I think, Julian, should I tell it's all the database rows? The thing Julian shared with me that made it click for me as a product and UX guy was he was like, you could build Instagram on the blockchain if you wanted to, but it would be a really, really dumb and expensive and slow idea. But really, in Instagram, every like and comment and picture is just a row in a database. And blockchains are just databases. But they're databases that nobody controls or owns, and they're really hard to mess up. And something about that articulation made my whole brain open up. And so when Julian approached me with an idea that started off as a prototype for what is now Heirloom, the idea was, hey, a lot of people are focused in currency and finance in the blockchain space, but there's this whole other set of problems that blockchains look like a really great architectural solution for, and that's identity, right? Identity, just like currency, is something that you want to be true, you want to be immutable, you want to be resilient, you want to be portable, you want to be completely owned. And so it's Julian's the reason I'm here. So thanks, Julian.
I love that. And I think I resonate with that a lot. Sorry, go ahead, Julian.
I was just going to say thank you, and you're welcome.
That's so sweet.
Awesome. So how did Heirloom start?
That's a great question. It started off, like many things, as a glimmer of an idea that was always, in my mind, focused on identity. But Julian and I have been employees at early stage startups, and we've founded early stage startups before. And when you get your butt kicked enough times out in startup land, you learn really quickly that like your perfect little cute ideas as to how things should work really do not survive exposure to the real world very often. And so the game that we're all playing is how do we get our ideas as fast as possible into the market and then learn all the reasons why it's a bad idea as fast as you can, and then rinse and repeat until something's left that looks like a good idea or someone wants to use. So if I'm being very honest, and this makes me feel a little feels a little cringy now, but this started off as an idea for tokenizing literal like copies of diplomas as NFTs, right? The idea is like non-fungible tokens are this great technology, and there's this thing that like looks like it could be a bitmap. It's like it looks like a picture. It's really valuable. You pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to a good university. So why don't we make NFT diplomas? And there are a handful of reasons why that's a terrible idea. But we didn't know that at the time. So we went out to the market and we like pitched this idea, and the first university to say, hey, yeah, we'll write you a check to pilot something and figure this out was the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. And it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that NFTs were the wrong solution for a couple of reasons. One, if USC woke up and one day and a degree in computer science was being sold on OpenSea, like that would be a big boo-boo. Secondly, as you all probably know, that depending on how the data are structured, there's a lot of personally identifiable information in a college degree. And if you're putting that on chain, that's really dicey when it comes to people accidentally getting doxxed or just exposing sensitive data about themselves that they may not want to disclose. And so it was really through working together with this first customer that we got that we started realizing that some at the time and maybe still more cutting edge primitives in the SSI space, like decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials, were a better fit for this, and that's honestly how it started. Julian, am I like mythologizing this too hard, or are there any other anecdotes you want to throw in there?
Yeah, you're mythologizing appropriately. There's some mythologizing in there, but it's good. No, I think it's a pretty accurate description of how we got started. And yeah, like I said, I had gotten a taste of decentralized ID when it was still kind of a nebulous concept a while ago, and it wasn't until we were working in the space where we were originally looking at NFTs and realizing what a bad fit they were that I remembered. Oh, I wonder what's going on with the decentralized ID people and what they've been working on, and it was actually kind of perfect timing because when they were talking about it back in 2016, it was the specs were very bare bones and very, very high level, and they were not ready. But when we were working on the degree stuff back in early 2022, I looked back into it and I was like, wow, there's a lot that's happened since I was here. And
yeah, in fact, version 1 came out. The version 1 spec from the W3C came out that summer, right?
I think it was that summer or like that spring or something like that. And it was like, wow, so this is now a fully baked spec. And there's not a lot of implementations for it yet. So this is kind of open ocean. So we can dive in and start playing around. And that was definitely a lot of fun.
I love that like journey that you all like described into like discovering like, okay, wait, let's use NFTs for this. And then you're like, wait, maybe it's not necessarily the right choice. Really quickly, I know what decentralized identifiers are, but I know that sometimes like beginners will watch our show. So I would love for y'all to kind of describe decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials and like your own perspective, especially since I heard that Julian had such a good way of describing how blockchain works. So I'm curious.
Oh man, Julian is the best. Can I just glow up my co-founder for a second? Julian is a brilliant engineer. He's also like a really good storyteller and a really nice person and a really just good communicator, which makes him a unicorn. How about this, Julian? Do you mind if I take a quick stab at DID for the layperson, and then you can take VCs as for the layperson?
Sounds good. Let's do this.
Okay, and I'm gonna like trot out my product manager chops here. So let's say we just met at a party, and you have a high level understanding of like how software kind of works, but you're not in the weeds, and you've never maybe built software before. I would say this. Every piece of software that needs to tell you and me apart from each other, which is a lot of software. It's not all software, but it's a lot of software, needs to give us some kind of unique identifier, right? So like if Rizel and Nick are both customers of Bank of America and we log in one day and we see each other's balances, that's going to be a big no-no. And so most, but not all software needs to tell users apart from one another so that it can show them relevant data about them, so that I can keep track of their preferences, whatever. And for almost all of software history, the most common, I mean, certainly in the internet era, the most common unique identifiers that developers use are number one is email addresses, and number two is probably mobile numbers. But there are some problems there. There are many problems with that. There are some simple dumb ones, like people typo their email addresses a lot, right? Like there are entire companies and products, like I'm not going to name check them because I haven't used them in a while, but like there's an API you can pay for as a developer just to make sure when I type my name at gmail.com, I'm not actually typing an N at the end of that string. I'm typing an M at the end of that string, right? So like that's a common problem. Another one is that you need some sort of secret to make sure that someone's not pretending to be me with my email address. That's usually a password, but passwords are often guessable or they're leaked online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then mobile number is very similar. People can intercept your SIM card. There are a lot of ways in which these unique identifiers are like Band-Aids on a problem, right? It starts off with good intentions and then it goes haywire. And before you know it, all your info's on the dark web and you can't order snacks on Grubhub. So, and that would be a sad day. Decentralized identifiers, sorry, that was a big long wind up. Decentralized identifiers are a newish kind of unique identifier. It's just a bunch of numbers and letters, but they're registered on a blockchain, or they can be registered on a blockchain. They can be registered elsewhere, but I tend to prefer them on blockchains. And as long as the blockchain exists, that identifier will exist, and the proof of the date and the time and the validity of that identifier will exist on the ledger. And I think the coolest part is that depending on how it's architected, what we do is we give the private keys to the individual that owns that identifier, which is very different from your Gmail address or your mobile number. You don't really own those things. And by accident or on purpose, you can be separated from those things. In fact, when I do talks, I often ask the question, raise your hand if there's an important piece of information that exists in an email inbox, maybe from a former employer, maybe from a university you don't go to school at anymore, that you no longer have access to because you're not affiliated with that organization, right? That's exhibit A of why you might want to own and control your identifiers throughout your life, right? So, man, that was long-winded. Decentralized identifiers tell you apart from me in a new way that lets me own my own portable identity and use it in software. That was a little rough. I'm gonna hand.
No, that
Go
was
ahead.
great. I thought that was great. I'm gonna steal the email transition from you when I talk to people about it. I thought that was a great example because after not working at GitHub, all my Black Girl Bites at GitHub stuff, it's all gone. So go ahead, Julian.
Yeah. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about verifiable credentials. My description is not going to be nearly as smooth as Nick's. He's much better at talking off the cuff than I am. But so the way I think of the distinction between decentralized identifiers or DIDs and verifiable credentials or VCs, I think of them in terms of authentication and authorization. So authentication, like Nick was talking about in software, it's concerned with identifying yourself to the software. Who are you? Like distinguishing Nick from Rizel, from Ace, from Julian. And then another piece of this, which is a confusingly close word to describe a different concept, is called authorization. So now that I know who you are, what are you allowed to do? What are things that you're allowed to do in this system? VCs, there's not a one-to-one mapping, but this is a way that I like to describe it, is that DIDs are authentication, VCs are more like authorization. So a verifiable credential is basically a packet of data that is cryptographically signed and tamper-proof, and it contains what are called claims, which are just pieces of data about a subject. So and then it has an issuer that it is signed by, and then you can prove that it comes from that issuer. So to use a concrete example, an issuer could be a university. So I went to the University of Southern California and I got a computer science degree. So USC could issue me a credential as an issuer that says, with me as the subject, with my decentralized identifier as the subject, saying graduated class of 2010. I'm dating myself here too, so that's fun. Class of 2010, computer science, bachelor's of science, University of Southern California. And then they can sign that using a key from that belongs to their decentralized identifier. And then at any point, because there's also a DID that is the subject of it, that is my DID, and I have the private key that represents that DID, I can present that to, let's say, an employer who wants to know for sure, like, I'm not lying about my degree. It really came from the University of Southern California. I can wrap up that verifiable credential into a presentation. I can sign it with my own private key, and then present that whole packet, where that contains both a signature from the issuer, a signature from the subject, to a verifier who can independently look up all these keys, all these public keys, verify that the signatures are valid, and then it came from the issuer that I say it came from, and then and trust that it's genuine. That's a verifiable credential in a nutshell. Yeah, like I said, not quite as good off the cuff as Nick is.
No,
I think one time Julian and I were.
Go ahead.
I think sorry to interrupt you, Rizel. One time Julian and I were having beers, and I was really trying to figure out what VCs were, and he says it's like VCs are like data that you know is true because math, and that was and the math part was the part that I had to smile and shrug.
That made me laugh. I love that. Okay, cool. I realized, man, like we're like halfway through, and I like had y'all talking without actually describing what Heirloom is, and then going into showing us what it is. So I would love for y'all to like explain what it is and give us a demo, and then after that, I'll let Ace ask questions, and I know there's questions in the chat, and then Ace asked really good questions, so I don't want to take up all the time.
Awesome. I think I'll go first then. So one thing that we're really opinionated about at Heirloom is that we think these tools, like we're really true believers when it comes to self-sovereign identity. But we think that one of the biggest problems is that these tools have to be easy, not only for individuals, like all four of us, but also for institutions to use these technologies. Otherwise, no one's going to use it. So we spend a lot of time focusing on the simplification of issuing and managing DIDs, issuing and managing verifiable credentials, extracting business intelligence about what's happening with them, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to give you a peek at some of the stuff we've built. I'm going to try to keep it narratively cohesive, but then for the other perspective, we'll switch to Julian. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I'm happy to share your screen whenever you're ready. I don't want to show us like
okay. I've minimized you.
Perfect.
But I don't know. But because I've minimized you, I don't know if my screen is visible.
It's visible.
Is my screen visible?
We see it.
Okay, great. So I've got my phone tethered on the left, and I've got a browser on the right with two different products. So on the right in our browser is the tool that issuers use. So you can think of it as like a B2B piece of software, business to business. It's called Heirloom Creator. And then on my phone tether, we've got this app called Heirloom ID. And in Heirloom ID, I've got stacks of credentials that are from different issuers. So for example, this was a conference that I went to last month, and here's my ticket to the conference, and you can see the credential and all the data claims that are inside of it. I also have proofs of attendance for all the days of the conference. And all of these are just packets of data, like Julian explained, that are signed by the issuer's DID. You can see that here, issuer details, to my DID, which is down here at the bottom under recipient details. The reason I'm showing this to you is because I'm going to go over to my Heirloom stack, and I've got my employee ID here, and I have it as a verifiable credential. So why am I showing you that? Because one of the tools we've built is single sign-on for where developers can, instead of emails and passwords, they can use DIDs and VCs to gate access to a service like Heirloom Creator. So I'm going to go in. This cryptographic challenge is asking if I'm an employee of Heirloom. So let's show them that I am. I'm going to just scan this QR code. It should identify my employee ID. It's going to very transparently share with me the data that this developer is asking for. In this case, I'm the developer as well, kind of weird. And I'm going to approve it. And we use Face ID to use the private keys to sign transactions. Once it's signed in my app, in my mobile app, it gets dismissed. I get an approval message. And now I'm in Heirloom Creator. So now that I'm in here, I'm just going to quickly show you the creation of a new credential set. So I'm going to go to events, and I'm going to create a new credential set. And we have a bunch of different data schemas, but I'm going to do a proof of attendance for this live stream. And I think I saved it to my clipboard. I did. So I'm going to call it Building with Web 5, and I'm going to create this set. And so we've got this credential designer that lets you kind of point and click and design your own credential. You can also upload custom background art and stuff. But I think Rizel said that her favorite color was purple. And I think Ace said that his favorite material was silver. So I'm going to go there, and I'm just going to click next. And I'm going to do a one-at-a-time issuance. So we can issue credentials in 3 ways. We can do one at a time, which just gives you some form fields in a structured manner to fill out. We can also upload a CSV with up to, I think at last check, it was like 20,000 at a time. Or we can use APIs or a QR code to auto-issue a credential based on some event happening in the world. But today I'm just going to issue Julian a proof of attendance credential one at a time. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to call this a live stream, and I'm going to skip this geolocation data because that's not relevant to this. And I'm going to add Julian for Hel de Dios and an email address, heirloom.io. Now I can fill out all this other information. We talked to Rizel and Ace. It was great. I can put whatever information in here that I want to. And what's important is that once I sign this from the Heirloom DID, it's immutable. And so I want to put as much data in here as I possibly can that's relevant. The reason I want to do that is, 1, it's good data hygiene. And 2, it's so that I might be able to query against that data inside that verifiable credential later for some other purpose. We can talk about that later. So now I'm just going to finish this and issue, and this is a brand new credential set. So I've got 1 row, I've got Julian, I can preview the info in here. that I just sent out. I get a little preview of the art up there in case I've got that collapsed. And that is the kind of back end. Now I think we should switch over to Julian so he can show what it's like to get a credential sent to him, set up a new wallet, and take custody of the credential and sign it with his personal DID as the holder. Does that make sense?
Yes, that was so cool to see too. And even Ebony wrote in the chat, like, this is so cool. All right, I'm switching over to you now, Julian.
I think a quick one before we go too far.
Yeah.
So I'm very like fascinated with like login options currently with DIDs or VCs, and I mean currently you use the combination of both, right? The DID and the VC. I was wondering if you came across, say, challenges or a reason why someone just signing in with their DID was insufficient for that kind of application.
So so the reason that we went with VC for our particular app is because we wanted to. We're an enterprise product, and we want to sign customers before they get access to our product. So what we do is we actually, we actually issue a credential to the customer in order for them to be able to log in, and so that way we would know, okay, well, this is somebody that we've issued a credential before, so that way they have access. There's no reason that you couldn't do that with just a DID. So if you were building a, like open sign up, like anybody can join with any decentralized ID, there's no reason that you couldn't use a DID. In fact, that's one of this login mechanism that we call quick login that we've built. We're rolling it out as an SDK in the next few weeks. And one of the things you'll be able to do is just accept, like, okay, you can either set, the way we've set it up is you can set up a what we call a credential query to say, oh, I want to have a specific credential type from a specific issuer with this specific field in the claims. You can get as granular as you want. But we're also allowing you to open it up. Just say, if you just want to say, hey, anybody with the DID can log in, like just use the DID as the authentication mechanism, and that's it. You have the ability to do both. But the sample that we're showing today is because that's how we chose to do it in our product. Yeah,
that is awesome. I'm looking forward to the SDK. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what people build with it. Should we switch over to my?
Yeah, I see us on the screen. That's why I didn't click it yet. But I'll go ahead and share.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I meant that's what you meant. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nick sent me the credential. So we currently have a few different ways of sending people credentials. But the main one that we use right now is email. As much as we dislike email, it's still one of the most ubiquitous tools that we have in order to send people an on-ramp into decentralized ID. So what I do is I get an email that is an invitation to claim a credential. So this is what Nick just sent me in the dashboard. So what I'm going to do is it says it's an attendance credential. It's issued by Heirloom. And then if I have iOS 16.4 or higher, then I can claim it on iOS by clicking this button. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button. And it's going to pop me into App Clip. And I'm going to click View App Clip. Oop, I haven't set up my wallet yet. So let's get set up with Heirloom. So it says here, it's like Nick said, we use the secure enclave on iOS devices to secure the private keys. So here we're just going to allow the app to set up Touch ID to encrypt, to generate the key, encrypt it, and then get my decentralized ID set up. So we're walking through the setup here. And there we go. It's grabbing the credential that Nick issued to me. It's the building with Web 5 attendance credential. I can review the details here to see if does it look like it's correct, because for attendance credentials, it's not a big deal if something might be wrong, but if it's your degree that you're getting in your wallet, you really want the name and everything to be correct. So we add this extra step to accept the credential. So I confirm information is correct, hit accept, and then I sign my acceptance of the credential, and there we go. I have it in my wallet. I've attended, this is my proof that I've attended this live stream.
Something that we're really excited about, but is not unique to us per se, is that we are leveraging the operating system's biometric authentication that happens on device to do all the private key management. So there are always trade-offs to anything, as I'm sure you all know. But from our perspective, Apple and Google both have very stress-tested, very reliable APIs, and people use them all day, every day for paying for things. And so rather than us setting up, long passphrases or other mechanisms for managing your keys, we, as the default, we leverage the biometric authentication APIs made by your smartphone's OS vendor or developer, Apple and Google. So there are trade-offs. Happy to discuss those if anyone has any questions. But again, we are really focused on making this as easy as possible and as quick as possible for normal people to get value out of these tools. I mean, it took Julian, he just showed you setting up a fresh DID. It took less than 30 seconds probably. And I've certainly spent longer than that setting up a lot of crypto wallets in my life. So we're pretty excited about where we're at.
Yeah, this is amazing. I have like two quick questions. I think the first one would be on the receiver's end, where is the credential stored? Are you storing like a decentralized web node? And what happens if I lose my phone, for example, and I have to re-download the Heirloom and authenticate again with my phone? Is it like synced in a way? Basically, how does that work? Yeah.
Julian, do you want to take the current and future answers to the DWN question?
Yeah, so right now we're just leveraging iCloud storage. So the credentials themselves on behalf of the user, they're stored on their device and then backed up to iCloud in an encrypted backup. That's a short-term solution because that's just what was fastest for us to implement first. We long-term don't want to rely on Apple's services and all that stuff in order for this to all work. Eventually we want to get to something that's closer to a DWN architecture where either these things are being stored on IPFS, or we have some sort of transportable like VM that each user gets that they're able to store on. Those are still kind of open questions. Like we've been most concerned with like just dialing in the user experience and making sure that the onboarding experience, the presentation experience is as easy as possible while still maintaining as much security and privacy as possible.
Awesome.
And Ace, what was the second? You asked two questions. What was the second question?
Yeah, I think.
Was it
the question is
Julian answered them both?
Yeah, because if you're using iCloud and I switch phones, once I authenticate, it basically just comes again. So I think that kind of answers both questions. Yeah, so that's.
Yeah.
We do have a bunch of questions in chat. We can go through.
Yeah, fire away.
Awesome. So I think this is for the quick login setup. How do you compare this to Microsoft Extra Verified ID?
I actually don't know a whole lot about Entra's Verified ID product. It looks, based on what I know about it, is that it uses a similar standard, so it should be interoperable with what we're doing. So everything that we've built so far is compliant with the W3C spec for verifiable credentials and decentralized IDs. In theory, what any other system that conforms to those specs should be interoperable with what we've built. We don't currently have mechanisms for either exporting or importing from other systems yet, but that's another one of those things that's on the roadmap eventually.
Yeah. May I jump, Julian? May I jump in there?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I'm going to say something that I believe is very, very true, and I really passionately want to say it, but I also am scared that I'm going to alienate or piss off, especially developers that really take this technology very seriously, as they should. So here's the thing. I think every developer in this space has every intention of making these things interoperable. because that's the vision and the philosophy of self-sovereign identity. But I have yet to see any platform. That doesn't mean I have an exhaustive knowledge, but I have yet to see any platform, even ones that are that align like we do with the W3C specs and open standards. I've yet to see any platform give true interoperability between platform. Take a verifiable credential from Microsoft or from TBD and drop it in your Civic wallet or whatever, right? I'm like, now I'm just free associating. But my point here is not to criticize any of us, including Heirloom. It is to say the following. I think right now we are so focused. Heirloom is for sure, but I think the whole industry is really focused on finding killer use cases and removing friction and improving the user experience such that there's enough adoption that anybody cares about interoperability. And I don't mean anybody, the four of us, because we all, I'm sure, intellectually care. I mean, like something I say to Julian a lot is, my brother is a great guy. He's great. He's smart. He's kind. He's a hardworking guy. He's a bartender. He's awesome and he's funny. He's not a computer genius, right? And doesn't care a lot about technology. When I think about the technology we're building, I'm building software for him to use. And when I say, when my brother cares about these technologies, that's when it's time to invest, all of us, to invest in interoperability, because that means we've cracked it. And we're not there yet. We're on our way together, but we're not there yet. So I've heard of a lot of people, I've even gotten some criticism online about, why haven't you published, why haven't you published open source libraries yet? Why haven't you, made your platform interoperable with product X or Y or Z yet? And the answer is we have every intention of doing that, but every startup only has so much resources when it comes to time and money and engineering power. And we need to spend that time and money and engineering power building something that the market wants to use. And then let's make it all interoperable. So it's kind of a funky moment of adolescence that the technology is in right now.
I'm here for the spicy take.
Yeah, I totally agree with the way you described it. We have conversations like that at TBD based on how the technology is still developing, the ecosystem is still developing, and there's so much to be built. But I guess it's going to take a bit of time. But that also leads me to the same question that is very similar to what you just explained from Ben on LinkedIn. And it's basically like, what use cases or customers do you get the most traction with at the moment? Because I guess eventually then that will also translate back to the users and interoperability at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. I'll jump on this one because this is like the intersection of product and business development. It's like what I spend all my time on. So this is my opinion, but the opinion is formed from like talking to everyone I possibly can for years and years and years. And yeah. And so I think we don't know yet. I don't think anyone knows yet for sure. But I think the shape of the shape of the answer here is going to be any workflow. I'll address this to Ben. Ben, any workflow that involves networks, which is a lot of workflows, right? Network effects, where there's more than one person interfacing with a piece of data that can be represented as a verifiable credential. And this is the key here in my framework, and where end users currently find themselves repeating themselves a lot. That's, I think, really the key. Any use case where an end user is repeating themselves a lot, what might that look like? I'll just give you a couple examples. I might repeat myself a lot when I go to a conference and I want to exchange my contact information with Rizel and Ace and Julian because we became friends and we want to hack on something together. I'm going to verbally or digitally tell you my phone number or my email address over and over, and my Twitter handle over and over and over again. When I apply for jobs, I'm going to I'm going to type my degree and my year and my GPA into a stupid form over and over again 500 times while I'm applying for jobs. Those are just two obvious use cases where the custody of a verifiable credential and verifiable data within the credential that I can then take and I can theoretically plug in into a bunch of workflows with a bunch of different counterparties, a bunch of different vendors over and over and over again, right? Think about the degree use case. I might want to take that degree and I might want to plug it into LinkedIn. And then I might want to turn around and plug it into Indeed. And then I might want to plug it into Gusto when I get hired for a new job to onboard into my new role. So bank account information, credit card information, these are instances where people are repeating themselves a lot. And anytime you repeat yourself, at best, you're wasting someone's time. And at worst, you're opening the door to user error or fraud. And these are the problems. These are the shapes of the problems that I see that these technologies can really revolutionize. But it's still the top of the first inning, and we've got a long way to go as an industry.
Yeah, I think one thing just to add to that is also, aside from like plugging in data or like just verifying claims, Angie has a recent use case where you have to just confirm like, hey, did you go to the school? Hey, did you are you old enough to buy alcohol? Like, you didn't necessarily need to share your age or your graduating honors, but like just validating that yes, this claim is true. I think that is also one of the interesting use cases for it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly, before you move to the next question, just say hi to Ben, because he's our coworker. He's the tech partnerships lead. So, hey, Ben, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for the great question, Ben.
Thank you. I think we have another one. I guess it's kind of the same question. What's the current target for you? Yeah, basically the same question, I guess. Awesome.
I don't know if I'm clear on what it means, what the current target use case or target industry of those options. I don't know if I understand.
Maybe our customers too. Like what?
Yeah, this is the B2B end. Yeah, like colleges that you already work with, like ESC. Like,
yeah, I mean, right now, most of our customers are either education institutions or event organizers. What gets really interesting and weird, and this is the subject of a lot of conversations over beers with Julian, is how if you squint, those things kind of don't look that different from one another, right? You've got two networks of a lot of people that have a shared interest and are coming together in the case of an event for a very short period of time, and in the case of an education, maybe for a slightly longer period of time, to have an experience. And then they may want to prove to counterparties in the future that they had that experience. Now, that experience could be Julian's birthday party, it could be Coachella, it could be a master's in political science. But those are all experiences that are the emergent properties of a network coming together temporarily or permanently. And I think that's probably enough trippy philosophizing for one call. I'm going to stop myself.
We do have a question from Discord. I can't put it on screen at the moment, but basically the question is, I would like to know from Nick and Julian if whether or not their SSI solution is based on Hyperledger tech. Besides, how do you envision the use of zero knowledge proof or selective disclosure on your platform?
I think I'll take this one, Nick. So no, we're not using Hyperledger. So we're on Polygon at the moment. So we support the did ether method on using the registry that's on Polygon. We've built a lot of this stuff, not specifically like a sort of lower level, not using like Hyperledger's tools, just more generically sort of conforming to the W3C spec. And then wait, what was the second half of the question? It was
how do you envision the use of zero knowledge proof or selective disclosure on your platform?
So zero knowledge proof and selective disclosure is something that we're excited about, but we have not implemented yet. But we can imagine so many interesting use cases that would enable. Like there's the classic, like you walk into a bar and you hand your ID to the bouncer. The bouncer doesn't need to know your address, doesn't need to know your birth date even. They just need to know, are you over 21? So building that kind of stuff is something that we're very excited about. And we have plans for, and I have definitely spent a lot of time thinking about it, but like any startup, we have to stay focused on the most important thing directly in front of us. And that so far has been just getting the user experience dialed in. But selective disclosure and zero knowledge stuff is something that we're excited about and we're going to be working on hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months.
Awesome. I think Nick responded to you from Discord as well. Says he's excited about applying this in the financial spaces. It's a journey. I don't know if you can see the message,
Yeah.
but I guess you can. Okay. But
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Just one more thing on financial services. That's another use case that might not be so daily, but for certain groups of people, the KYC process, right? If you want to move more than, at least in the United States, if you want to move more than what, $500 or $600 from one bank account to another, you need to go through a redundant and privacy. What's the opposite of privacy preserving? Privacy destroying. Privacy rotting. It's getting weird. Privacy destroying user experience with one of many companies that have APIs or products that Coinbase or JP Morgan or whatever is routing you through, right? That's an example of, I'm repeating myself. It's a terrible user experience. It takes a long time and it's not very private, right? I'm kind of scattering my valuable private information all over servers, all over the place. So the idea in financial services, one of the many, is that if financial institutions could do KYC once, know your customer once, with an individual, and then issue them a verifiable credential that they could then take and reuse, then the question becomes: does the second or third or fourth or fifth counterparty trust the initial issuer? And that's up for them to decide, right? Maybe the initial issuer is Morgan Stanley, and maybe you think that that's valid. Maybe the initial issuer is my cousin Michael, who lives in Chicago and isn't in the financial services industry, so I don't know why he issued that KYC credential. It gets very, very weird very quickly, but there's so many use. I mean, the problem with these tools, I mean, Ace, Rizel, do you both feel this way? Like, once you start getting deep on these technologies, it's like hard to not see solutions in like every single industry. It's almost overwhelming. It's like, where do you even start?
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, I relate.
Yeah, there's a lot. We have more questions.
Yeah, fire
This
away.
is a lot. I guess you can see it.
Yeah, this one, Brazil. So first of all, we love partnering with everyone on Earth. So please get in touch. My email address is nick@heirloom.io if you want to email me.
Nice.
But how are we thinking about Face ID and handling private keys? Julian, I want you to handle that, but I also want to give context to people that don't know. Brazil's doing some very interesting stuff, and I might get my details slightly wrong here, but there was either a law proposed or passed, it might have just been proposed recently, that would, for example, put not only state-issued IDs on chain, but also vehicle identification, like VIN numbers, vehicle identification numbers. The idea being that it could dramatically reduce the administrative overhead of administering a country or a state that has a lot of automobiles. And I mean, if you just think about the last time you needed to like change your address with the DMV, you know how at least time consuming, if not expensive, that was. So that's something Brazil, I've been reading about Brazil innovating a lot in this space. Julian's probably the better person to handle Face ID and private key cryptography.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question the way that it's written, but I'll take a stab at it. The way that we use Face ID and more specifically the secure enclave on device is purely so we basically just generate a seed for a private key. Or a private keychain, to be more specific, and then encrypt that inside the device using the device's secure enclave. And then the ability to request the secure enclave decrypt the key is facilitated by Face ID or Touch ID or PIN code on the device. So I'm not sure I understand what the question is about Face ID algorithm, and instead of using the device's biometric capabilities, but that's just a description of how we use it. So it's pretty straightforward. We use the security that Apple has already bulletproofed and rock solid battle tested to protect the private key for the user.
Yeah, I think the person is trying to introduce a new Face ID algorithm, but yeah, you can just drop more comments in chat so we understand better. We have another question that is related to, I think, the quick login. I And I don't know if you've seen this, but it's basically asking.
Is it the? Yeah.
Yeah.
Julian, do you mind if I take a pass at this?
Sure, go for it.
So yeah, I think my understanding is that it's a pretty old concept in cybersecurity. It's actually three factors: something you have, something you know, and something you are. There are a couple big problems with that from my perspective, and far be it from me to like argue with institutional cybersecurity, like that's way above my pay grade. But the problem comes down to, I think, in reverse order. The biggest problem is something you know. If there's something you know, that means it's something that you can share, and that also means it's something that you could accidentally reveal. And I think my personal opinion is the something you know piece of the cybersecurity and like authentication paradigm is the weakest link. And because if my password is 12345, or if it's boogers, like that's not going to take very long for you all to crack every account that I have, and that's not cool. Also, this is less of a consumer perspective, but more of a business perspective. Think about use cases where you might consent to sharing that something you know. For example, if you share a Netflix password with a relative that doesn't live with you, right? That might be something you do. It might be something that I've done in the past. Don't tell Netflix. Netflix might not like that at all, right? Like that might actually harm their business, and they might want to kind of defend against that in some way or another. So the something you know piece is the weakest link, in my opinion. The something you are is really interesting. That's one we're not really arguing against. That's often used as biometric, and we're using on-device biometrics. The something you have is also a little bit of a twist here, because typically something you have in strong multi-factor authentication is something like a hardware key. And that's still probably like a YubiKey or something. And that's still probably like one of the more secure methods of authentication. But you got to keep track of them. You got to buy them in the first place. You got to keep track of them. You can't lose them, right? Our stance there is that there are actually kind of two things that you have. One, you already have. It's your smartphone, and it's something that over time you're increasingly less and less likely to part ways with it, right? We do a lot of user research, and we found that increasingly users are like less likely to like hand their phone to like a close friend to do something with it, because there's just so much on there, and it's such like a personal part of you that you really many people never want to lose contact with that hardware device. So we think that's one, maybe weaker than a YubiKey, but it's still a hardware factor. And then when you combine that with your private keys to your blockchain-based identifier, that is also something you have. It's a digital something you have. It's not as strong as a physical something you have. So again, I'm not under deposition here with Congress or the Department of Defense, but our perspective at a very high level is we are giving you multi-factor authentication just in a different way that happens to be way easier for you to comply with, because something you are is your face or your finger, which we're using APIs with your smartphone to tap into. We're getting rid of something you know, because that was in you blame it on me. That was in Nick's opinion a stupid idea from the beginning. And then we're giving you two somethings that you have, and those two somethings, your smartphone and your private key, are maybe individually weaker than a YubiKey, but when combined, they give a pretty robust layer of defense. Something, that we say sometimes is like, if you're in a situation where a malicious actor has your face and your smartphone in their possession, you've got very big problems on your hands, and keeping track of your degree is probably the farthest from your problems. And so with all due respect, let's maybe stack rank our priorities. And if you work at the Department of Defense, maybe that's not an acceptable answer. So maybe you shouldn't use quick login at the Department of Defense. Although if anyone wants to talk to me, I'm willing to listen.
Gotcha. Thank you. That was a very detailed answer. We are running up on time. I just want to have like a quick question. I don't know if Rizel has any more questions and also other things. I think my question would be, you described a little bit about like the long-term goal, like your brother being able to use tools like this as easily as possible. But I still want to ask, like, for the work you do at Heirloom, what is like a short-term vision or goal, and at the same time, what's the long-term vision or goal in the long run for it?
I think it's easier to answer the other direction, obviously, right? The long-term goal is that every human, and potentially every, let's call them every synthetic agent, in the world has an immutable and independently verifiable identifier that can be used to label their transactions, label the content they generate, label transactions they authorize in a appropriate and transparent way. I think that's so important, and it's particularly important, in my opinion, for reasons like of disinformation with generative AI. Right, we're going to live in a world. We maybe already do live in a world where most of the content is that's generated synthetically is indecipherable from something that you wrote. But that's just the world we live in. I don't think we're putting that genie back in the bottle, but I think a path to a better world is one where content is transparently labeled, the same way you might have the lock icon in your browser when you have a valid SSL key for your web domain, right? So if I read a tweet and it's by a very, very funny variant of GPT, I might still want to read that, but I want it to be labeled, and I certainly don't want it manipulating my voting decisions. So the long-term vision is building a world of improved security and decreased friction, or put it a different way, a better user experience, which for all of time, in my opinion, those two things have been at odds with one another. And I think these tools and technologies give us a path to a world where we can frictionlessly and seamlessly transact. This is where I differ from the crypto world a lot. Not in a trustless way, in a trustful way, because there's transparency and there's auditability and there's disclosure. So that's the long-term vision. The short-term vision is that we can actually solve problems that bring value to customers that can pay to have those problems solved, so that we can build sustainable businesses and continue to invest, all of us, that we can build sustainable businesses and invest in these very, very cool technologies. And so I think, one of my personal, let's call it short-term, let's call it 2-year goals, I don't see any reason why every university in the world isn't issuing degrees and, let's say, education credentials on the blockchain in the next 2 years. I mean, honestly, there's nothing in the laws of physics stopping them all from doing that tomorrow. But obviously, that's not how human systems work. So I think like having a few of these valuable, emotionally valuable, financially valuable assets that many of us have, our citizenship, our education, our job history, our friendships, our skills we have, having these things put in our custody for the first time since the internet was invented, I think is a pretty bold short to medium term vision too. That's my stab at it. Julian, anything you can?
I don't think I can. There? I don't think I can top that or add anything to that.
Yeah,
that was awesome. Also, sorry, Rizel, please go ahead.
No worries. I know we're coming up on time. I think that's a good question to ask, and I do have like the fun questions at the end, and then we'll quickly wrap up. But I guess someone's just asking, what's been the reception of universities when you talk to them about verifiable credentials?
We have never talked to a university that just says, no, this is bad and stupid and we don't want to touch it. That has not yet happened. I'm sure there's someone out there that'll tell us that, but it has not yet happened. And we've talked to, I want to say I don't want to sound elitist here, but like just in terms of framing this, right? Like most of the top 25 universities in North America, and none of them have said, nope, we'll never do this, go pound sand. However, here's the qualifier. Here's the big hairy butt. But they're going to go slow. And I think the biggest reservation they have is not to verifiable credentials, and it's not to decentralized identifiers. It's to blockchains, for a few reasons. One, I don't think it's a scandal for us to say that in our industry, we have some PR messes to clean up when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to rug pulls, when it comes to bad actors. That's just going to take some time for us to establish a base of trust again with general consumers. But the second one is that universities are really weird in that they take a much longer term view than most other institutions. We had a call with a very old university in the UK, and the very memorable administrator on the phone said to me, I can go to our archives and pull a degree that is written on sheepskin from the 13th century. Can you assure me that a blockchain will last for the next 700 years? And my honest answer to her was, no one can assure you of that. I think blockchains are maybe the first technology since sheepskin that plausibly could last that long, depending on a lot of things, but only time will tell. So there's this really interesting mixture of in higher ed of these like countervailing pressures of a genuine desire to build better, offer better student and alumni experiences. I mean, that's something I hear in every conversation with higher ed, a genuine desire to improve the daily lives of students and alumni. And the countervailing pressure is also this aversion to doing anything too quickly, doing anything too hastily, doing anything that might not have staying power, or doing anything that might tarnish their brands. And that's somewhat rational if you think about it. So I think it's just a matter of time. And we love universities. We love students. In fact, one plug I want to give, if anyone's listening here, that's a student. We have a program that we launched a few months ago. It's called Heirloom Labs. And Heirloom Labs, we just give free access and early access, so like beta access to all of our technology to student groups. So if you're a student that's in a hackathon or a blockchain student group or an entrepreneurship student group or a cybersecurity student group, and you're interested in just, honestly, what I tell students when they onboard is, please break this. Because if anyone's going to break it, it's going to be you, and it's going to be fast, and that's how we're going to learn. So please, like, have at it. Here are the keys. Take it for a spin. And we have already, in a few short months, learned so much from the students in Heirloom Labs. So if anyone listening to this or watching this is a student in a student group, please reach out to us. Like I gave my email address earlier. You can also email hello@heirloom.io, and we'll connect you to some members of our team that are focused on Heirloom Labs, because it's so important, and we love students.
That is awesome.
It. That was great. I know we're over time, but I like to end the stream on these kinds of questions just so it can end on like a sweet note. I hope it's not like going into your time too much. But first, it's only 3 questions, and they shouldn't be too hard. First question is, what's your favorite food? To either of you. Or both of you?
I have a very weird specific answer for this. So my family used to own a fast food restaurant that I grew up working in. It was a teriyaki place. It closed down a while ago, and I miss eating it a lot. So that's my answer. That's my favorite food.
That's cool. I wish my family owned a fast food restaurant. What about you, Nick?
I love. Don't judge me. The humble turkey sandwich is like a canvas upon which you can paint any flavor painting that you'd like to paint. I love turkey sandwiches. I eat a lot of turkey sandwiches, but I mix them up a lot.
Okay, so you're doing remixes. You're like,
sometimes it's
salad.
plain.
I mean, lettuce.
Sometimes it's plain. Sometimes you get like a little like Sichuan chili sauce. Sometimes you do like a little, you grill it. Sometimes you do like a little Thanksgiving vibe. Maybe you mash some yams or potatoes on it and you eat it that way. Like, you just get kind of weird.
That sounds really good. I like that. Okay. Next question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I got this one. the ability to grow plants at an accelerated rate. Basically, basically poison ivy powers.
Wait, you were really quick to answer that.
Nick is obsessed with his garden, and yeah, it's literally every day I'm getting pictures of like, here are the new tomatoes I grew. Oh, the watermelons are coming in. Like, so he's obsessed with plants.
I love it.
Mine would be probably time manipulation. Just, I guess Nick's answer is kind of the same, except he would only apply it to plants.
How limited I am when you say it that way.
We talked about that, Ace, on like the first stream.
Yeah.
Or, like,
So you basically want to be Loki.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of the ultimate superpower because like you can just like pause, rewind, replay things, move, jump into the future. See, like it's just like you get infinite time. Time is the most precious resource, and you have unlimited of it.
Awesome.
Okay, and last but not least, this is a very important question. What's your favorite Beyonce song?
Oh, Crazy in Love, because it came out when I was in high. It just gives me nostalgia vibes because it came out when I was in high school. Every marching band was playing. It was like because it has like, every marching band was playing that song like at every football game I would go to, and it was just I don't know. I just have like really good nostalgia vibes from that song.
Yeah, it does have good nostalgic vibes for me too.
Yeah.
What about you, Nick?
All right, I'm going to be lame. I'm going to preface this by saying Beyonce is one of the most talented human beings that's ever lived on this planet.
Are you going to say you don't like
my-
Beyonce's music?
No. My super basic answer is Single Ladies, and not even really the song, but because it came out right around when my son was born, and when he was a toddler, I used to do the dance for him, and it would crack him up when he was like 2. And by the way, it's not good, and I will not do it again. But my point is, for special sentimental reasons, probably the most obvious answer that you could pick.
Okay, I'll take that for the reason of your son. I like that.
It used to crack him up.
I love it. All right. Is there anything? I know that you said reach out to you at hello@heirloom.io. Is there any other place that people should check y'all out? That's it. Or heirloom.io itself.
Yeah, heirloom.io
I think
is
our website is best.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to snipe here, but like it's a weird time in social media. You don't really know where to go. You don't know where to like invest. We're doing some experiments with our Discord community, but we need some help from you all because we don't know what we're doing, and so the community is still very nascent, and we're finding our footing. But yeah, I think our website's probably the best place to start.
Awesome. All right, y'all go ahead to heirloom.io or reach out to them at hello.heirloom.io. You should talk to Ebony. She's our community manager in Discord, and she's really great. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It was some really great questions. Yeah. And thanks to Nick and Julian, too, for your time, especially because we went over. I know y'all are founders. You're probably busy. Ace, if you wanted to say something, go ahead.
Oh yeah, this was very amazing and educative. Nice to see like some of this in like real life applications running, and also seeing all the thought process that I put into it. I guess that's why we had a lot of interesting questions in chat as well, because it's very real, so to say. Like you could see it in action, and I think that was amazing. So thank you so much again for just coming and sharing us all of this.
Yes, and with
awesome.
that,
thank you both so much. That's all. You've been absolutely wonderful and generous hosts. So
yeah, thank you for having us. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Same here. Thank you.
I had fun too. Thanks, y'all. All right, we'll end here. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.